Hello and welcome again to Inside HMI. Joining us today for an in-depth interview, we have Joe Leeway.
Thank you.
Now you were telling us about your rising status.
Yes, the rising status. And things came to a head because there were shifts of personnel as we went, in and out. And how did it eventually come to end up with just three of us? We mushroomed out to a 7-piece, and what really hit the fan was when we did the 2 nights at the Hammersmith Odeon and still came away with no money whatsoever. We would have walked to rehearsals and that. It was like, because all the money, we would build our own equipment, you see, so we could play anywhere. We built our own bass bins and all of that stuff.
But there were 7 of you before.
7.
Well,
and it was a thrashy guitar, and we could blow anywhere. We could hold it with anybody. It was just very brilliant. And the actual makeup of the band was kind of interesting. 2 Cambridge graduates, 1 Oxford graduate, and myself from Kiel. It was like the conversations were, no one was giving an inch, all the way through. So what happened was we did the Hammersmith Odeon and the Lyceum, and then things came to a head. I told you I'd been doing the S, and that was still, part of my whole approach to life. So eventually the manager came to me and said, what do you want to do? So I said, I want to work with Tom and Alana, and that's it. And actually that's not true. As I think about it, I've just sort of revised history there. Actually, Alana and I hated one. Well, we didn't hate one another, but we didn't really get on, although we're time twins and everything else. So John said to me, you can work with Tom, but you need to work with Alana as well because, they're involved in that. I said, well, Alana and I don't really get along. And so I put that to one side. He said, well, just put that to one side. This little formula will work. The only deal is, it's like being headhunted. You have to tell them. I'm not saying anything. So we had this big meeting, and during the meeting, this awful meeting came, 7 of us, and I had to stand up and say, well, lads, here's the deal. We're splitting up the group, and I want to work with Tom and Alana. And I was the only one who had the guts to say it. And the rest of you, bring on the hate vibes or whatever, but this is just what I got to do. Otherwise I'm leaving, I'm out of here. And so we got through it. And so in order to get through it, we decided to write to the press and say that we'd gone to Egypt. And basically we went to Norfolk to a cottage and wrote our first album as a 3-piece. And the first song we wrote was Lies, because we said that we were somewhere and we weren't.
Great song.
And we also decided, you know what, forget guitars. We don't want guitars anymore. Okay, they're out. Forget a drummer. I've so had it up to here with drummers and their opinions. Whatever. And the noise and the whole thing. Let's get rid of a drummer as well. Can we do that? Yeah, because now we're into the technological 80s. We have drum machines. We've got a drum machine, brilliant, and we've got a synthesizer, so we don't need guitars. So suddenly, it's possible for a 3-piece to sound huge and get out of the cliche of the rock guitar thing and all of that stuff. So we literally then decided for 5 years, no guitars and no drummers. And we'll write without that. And it worked. And we also decided not to be a boring political band and become totally pop. So from doing songs like Living in Europe and all where they're complex and everything, suddenly we come out with lies, 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 yeah. Da, 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 lie. But it was so refreshing, just cram it. So what else had to go with this? We had to build an image, and I think the thing that accelerated it was we wrote down what we needed, and we gave ourselves a time period. We said, okay, because I still didn't know if I would be able to make it with Alana. So John said to me, John Haid, our manager and friend, said, look, do it for 18 months. If it doesn't work out, we're out of here. Everyone's out. And I'm thinking, 18 months of my life, I can write that off, no problem. Okay. And I can go for it 100%. So we wrote out, what is success going to look like? What are we going to do? We've got to get on top of the pops. We've got to have a #1 album. We've got to have #1 singles. Obviously, I've got to have a record deal. We've got to, and we're going to be pop, so it's all about image. We've got to be on magazines. We've got to be on #1 magazine. We've got to be in all of the magazines, Vogue, everything. that whole media is pop, total pop. And we've got to work with some cool people who we liked. And because we're percussive, we liked Grace Jones at the time, Bob Marley, all that stuff was blowing through England, and everything else. And Bob had been a major influence on me, because before Bob, trying to be very English, I used to straighten my hair. And then Bob Marley came along with the Old Grey Whistle Test and the Wailers, and literally one of the Wailers left because he wasn't impressed with England. So instead of trying to be English, they were going, yeah, we get your culture, and actually we don't really need this. It's not that impressive. I'm going, back to Jamaica, because I've got my own sense of roots, and that really impressed me. That kind of was a major liberation in my life, actually. It's like, wow, I don't have to do anything. So I stopped doing stuff to my hair, let it lock up, dreaded up, and then by the time the three of us came, we went to the barbers, all got coiffed, because before we were wearing rags, and now we were all had a makeover. Suddenly everyone was glam. Alana had her hair teased out, Tom had the red and black, so we had a design, let's get on it. So we wrote some songs, went up to get a record deal. The marketing guy said, I don't hear it. So our manager went to the rest of the record company and said, fire the marketing guy. He's not getting it. So we did. We fired him. So then we're a second tier on Arista Records. We got the deal. It's the best day.
Yeah.
And they said, well, where do you want to record your first record? And we said, okay, we want to record it in the Bahamas. They went, no, your first record. We want to work with Alex Sadkin, who's working with, Bob Marley. No, your first record. Where do you want to do that? We want to do our first record in the Bahamas with these guys. Yeah. And they said, no, that's not, people don't do that. And at the time, we weren't the number one flavour, because you can get a record deal, but if you're not the number one flavour, you get passed over. And who was the number one flavour? Haircut 100. Oh. They did so massively that Nick was, I think Nick Hayward or whatever, the lead singer, the pretty boy, they did so well that they convinced him to go solo. As soon as he went solo, obviously the band split up. They said, well, who's left? The Thompson Twins. Let's promote them. So again, we were in the right place at the right time, and we were ready because we were good, we had the material, and we just needed an audience. We needed it promoted, and we got it. And then the rest is history. We had number ones, we had riots, and we lived the life of Riley. We lived in, we had offices in Paris, London. I'm half Irish, so I had a farm in Ireland. We lived in Paris, but we lived in castles. We'd go away to riot in castles, and we started that whole notion, and then U2 followed us. But so it went all the way until it became a job. Our 5 years of it, going from all the way up to Live Aid or whatever, was when I really started getting sick of it. Because we betrayed our principles. We started bringing in guitars, we went MOR, middle of the road, and so it died for me. And so we did the gig in Japan, and then I had a word with John, said I need to take 6 months off, the manager, but he thought, great, now I've only got 2 people to deal with, I can dominate with 2 better than 3. So he didn't say, snap out of it. Let's get on with it. Let's all take 6 months off. He thought, no, it was very black and white. So in the end, that's the funny thing about music. You can just walk out. People have got, have their mortgages based on your performance or the A&R. And suddenly there's no band anymore. It's like, hello. But I did that. I did that cliche thing of leaving the band. I just walked out. Japan was the last time I performed at the Budokan. And it
brought you to...
Brought me to tears.
Well, but no, how did you make that segue from...
From there to being in America? Okay.
Yeah.
So by the time I'd left the band, I needed people to, wipe my butt, basically. I paid them to do that. And once I'd left the band, I couldn't afford that, but I still had, people I employed. So I brought them all to America with me. And with this girl I just met, and on a whim I decided I need to get into a serious relationship. The universe is listening. Okay, you'll do. And then within 6 weeks, we're married.
Oh my God.
That's as much thought I put into it. It's like, whoa. Now what? Well, I can do that because I'm not doing anything else. Let's get married.
Wow.
And from that point, because I got married to her, we tried Ireland. It was too wet. Paris, she didn't speak French, so we thought America. So first we lived in New York, and then we came to, I had a place in Woodland Hills. I had one of those little pads in Woodland Hills, and bought a place there, just a stone's throw from here.
Yeah.
And that was in 91 or something.
Wow.
It was like, oh my God. Now I think about HMI, where I came to, a few years later. Anyway, so as soon as I get here, the imperative, what are you going to do? You're all about world domination. You better get on it because the train's moving. And it has such movement to it. Try getting back on the train again.
Yeah.
Forget it.
Yeah.
So to cut a long story short, I got another couple of record deals, but I started sabotaging them. In other words, I took the money and didn't deliver. And so, yeah. I'm very sorry about that. Really, you know.
Well, we're going to hear more about this because
Okay, but that was when I was going. That's on the decline. I needed something to.
this is
lift me up.
huge. We're going to hear so much more in just a moment, and it's time for a short break. So stay tuned, and when we come back, we're going to hear about what happened
Yes.
next.
What saved
Thank
my
you.
We could play anywhere. We built our own bass
Yeah.
bins and all of that stuff.
But there were 7 of you before.
7.
Well, that-
And it was a thrashy guitar. And we could blow anywhere. We could hold it with anybody. It was just very brilliant. And the actual makeup of the band was kind of interesting. 2 Cambridge graduates, 1 Oxford graduate, and myself from Kiel. It was like the conversations would eventually come to end up with just 3 of us. We mushroomed out to a 7-piece, and what really hit the fan was when we did the 2 nights at the Hammersmith Odeon and still came away with no money whatsoever. We would have walked to rehearsals and that. It was like, because all the money, we would build our own equipment, you see. So
Hello and welcome again to Inside HMI. Joining us today for an in-depth interview, we have Joe Leeway.
thank you.
Now you were telling us about
Oh yes,
your
and
rising
yes,
status.
the rising status, and things came to a head because there were shifts of personnel as we went, in and out. And how did it develop? No one was giving an inch, all the way through. So what happened was we did the Hammersmith Odeon and the Lyceum, and then things came to a head. I told you I'd been doing the S, and that was still, part of my
Yeah.
whole